Hi folks, and welcome back to Meaningful Money. Okay, I'm here in the headquarters of Seven Investment Management in the City of London, so a long way from West Cornwall. Here again with Justin Urquhart Stewart.
Hello,
Thank you very much again, Justin, for your time. It's been a pretty turbulent week, 2 or 3 weeks really, in markets generally. So I thought I'd take the opportunity of being up here at 7 AM to pick Justin's erstwhile brains as to what he thinks the sources of that are and what it means for you as investors. So let's go. So Justin, as I say, it's been a funny couple of weeks. Can you perhaps just explain what has happened, and particularly up to the last weekend, because it's Monday the 29th of November today, and it's been quite an interesting weekend for Ireland.
It's been an incredible weekend. I mean, when you actually think about all the things that have happened over the past couple of weeks, just leaving the euro aside for a second, we've had the issues of China with its inflation and interest rates. You've had America with its anemic growth figures. You've had bombs going off and shells going off over the Korean border. And then you've got bombs going off in the sovereign bond market as well. So you couldn't actually make this up.
Not just Ireland, then.
No, it's not just Ireland. But what Ireland has shown up is some fundamental flaws within the Eurozone itself. Basically what you've got, of course, is not just a country which has been absolutely knackered by its banks. It wasn't caused by the euro, it was caused by the banks. Unfortunately, the resolution of the problem is being not helped by the euro. Because in any other currency, you would be able to devalue your currency, but they're locked into the euro. Okay. And of course the euro therefore has some fundamental problems. So what they can do is try and put up a package to say, well, we're going to support Ireland, it's going to be fine. But you could almost say that and I got myself into terrible trouble the other day on Irish television when I referred to them as a zombie nation. They didn't get on terribly well.
I'm sure.
But what I actually meant was they're in a position where they can pay the interest, but they can't pay back the capital.
Ever?
Well, eventually, as soon as they get some growth back in the economy. Okay. But they're a bit like being maxed out on your credit card. It's just so huge at the moment. Now, good news for actually Ireland is, despite all the headlines, their export figures are doing quite well, and their unit costs of labour have come down very dramatically indeed. But the flaw in the euro still exists. You cannot have, really, a single currency where you've got 16 different fiscal policies and one central bank. America's got 50 different economies, 50 different states, but one federal tax policy and one central bank. And think about it, for example. We have a single currency in Britain. You save money in a bank in Truro, and it probably gets lent out to by a bank in those days when banks used to lend out money to a distant past, but they would get lent out to a computer company in Bracknell or something like that.
Sure, right.
So being in a single currency, we therefore push money back down to Cornwall again. Otherwise, all the money would be in the South East, and there'd be nothing left in Scotland, Cornwall, or Ireland. And so therefore, you have a single currency, a single union. So therefore the euro can't really work until they start heading towards a more unified structure. That's not going to happen anytime soon. So what they can do in the short term is, one, plaster over some of the cracks by putting extra funds in, but we watch out because the same thing could happen to Portugal. Spain's a different kettle of fish. I know the journalists get very worked up over it, but it's a much, much bigger country altogether. But the main thing they're going to probably try and address is maybe a two-tier euro core, and you could also have sort of Northern Europe, because you have call it the Euro if you like.
Yeah, I can see that taken off.
Yes, but imagine, because 75% of the Eurozone, its GDP, the value of its economy, is Germany, Benelux, and France. So actually, that's been pretty successful. It's the outliers that haven't been successful. So therefore, you could have a Euro core and then Euro light, as it were.
Okay.
Imagine, you go back a few years ago, and it must be now about 20, 25 years ago, South Africa had two currencies. You had an external rand and you had a domestic rand.
Oh, right.
And what it meant, they could devalue domestically quite elegantly, whilst still allowing their external currency to remain as it was. Now, if you did that in Ireland and Greece, you could have effectively still being part of the euro, but effectively have a domestic currency, as it were, a bit like the Totnes pound. I know we shouldn't talk about Devon, but you know what I mean. But so in due course, actually that currency could then rise up till it finally meets the euro.
I see, right. Okay.
But it would allow them to do that. Are they talking about that? The answer is no. But
Not
then
publicly,
again,
at least.
it's a possibility they could do it. But it'd be quite an elegant way out of it. But the way they stand at the moment, they haven't resolved the problems.
Okay, so something was announced yesterday, apparently in a bid to sort of hopefully settle markets today. So yesterday was Sunday 28th. So what was announced yesterday?
Right, what they announced was a package of 70 billion equivalent in sterling of facilities. I mean, just huge, including a reasonable amount from ourselves as well. And you can argue whether you think that's right or not, but actually we're Ireland's largest creditor, so therefore we're sort of in for a penny, in for a pound. There's nothing we can do to try and change that. It's about a figure of about 139, 140 billion pounds that the Irish owe us. So chucking them a few extra billion, actually, of course, at rates which mean we make a profit at it, as long as we get repaid. So we'll borrow at about 2.5–3% and lend it out at over 5%. Not a bad deal, actually.
No, sounds like a plan.
Yes, the only trouble is, what are we getting for security?
Okay.
Maybe one or two, I don't get, Donegal maybe, or Mayo, no, that won't go down terribly well.
No. I'd take perhaps County Kerry.
Take Kerry, I'm sure they won't mind. Ask Sinn Féin, they'll go along with it. So it's a bet, because the average expenditure on British goods across all the Irish population is about £3,500 a year. So we can't afford to have Ireland actually being hobbled. We need a vibrant Irish economy. It helps Britain. That's why we have to participate in this. So what they've done is, through the IMF, through the European Stability Fund, and through some direct support from Britain as well, everyone said, right, okay, we're going to support the Irish. They're going to have to pay a reasonable rate of interest, but at least it means that this particular monkey's off their back for the moment. They don't actually have to go to the international markets for another 6 months, but it still doesn't resolve the problem.
No, it sounds like it's deferring it rather than resolving it.
Unfortunately,
6 months is not a long time, is it?
No, and of course, in the meantime, we've got Portugal to try and manage as well.
That was going to be my next question. Are they next?
Well, it depends what the bond markets want to do, but if they sniff blood, the chances are yes. Now, actually, the fund they've put up in terms of the overall support fund for the Eurozone is more than capable of actually dealing with this. But in effect, what they're doing is almost putting up a lump of money for someone like Soros to bet against. So they've got to be really careful. So they're buying time. What I would urge them to do, though, in the ECB, is resolve the underlying problem.
Which is the multi-state one thing.
Exactly. And that's going to take some time. Or at the very least, put in the disciplines so that these levels of debt are brought down, and anybody who breaches them from now on will be fined. Because this has been going on for years. It's just that during the period of complacency, no one cared, didn't matter. Who was going to tell them that the emperor was somewhat sartorially challenged?
Okay.
So they just went along with it.
Right. The mind boggles really how people can be so complacent when things are good, but I suppose perhaps we're all guilty of that to a point, but certainly at that kind of level. So what should ordinary people be doing? Is there anything, should there be any sort of reaction to this, or is it another thing to ride out?
Well, certainly in terms of sovereign debt, I hope nobody's actually got any Irish debt themselves, but because that would have been going down a lot in value. No, during a moment like this, what you can see, this is an issue relating to particular nations in the Eurozone. Perversely, the euro itself is still a perfectly successful currency, because look at some of those countries which are doing well. Germany at the moment is doing extremely well. Its exports doing well, and we had some quite encouraging figures last week. So what should we all be doing at the moment? Well, the answer is hold hard to your disciplines. Broad asset allocation, as ever. Forgive me, it's a rather tedious mantra, but it sort of works. Yeah. And make sure, therefore, you are well spread, because it's not just the Eurozone. We've got issues over what's happening in China and the Far East, and their attempts to try and slow themselves down. And there will be issues within China within a year or so, particularly probably around the property market, because there's no property law to speak of, no codified law of property, which people remember what property was like in Spain when people started losing their houses. Not a good sign.
No, not with that many people.
No, and the American economy, well, it's been showing signs of picking up. We just had Black Friday, where
Are the numbers out yet?
Yes, well, the first figures out, and they actually look quite encouraging. But I have to say, a bit like in America, you can see the same over here. I had a rather particularly unpleasant opportunity of walking down Oxford Street and Regent Street. It's never particularly appealing. No. Oxford Street especially. And you could see a lot of people shopping, but there was one bag they were all using, and it had Primark written on it. So yes, we're all going to have a happy Christmas. It's just a cheap one.
Yes, well, pretty telling. Well, it could be worse, couldn't it? Justin, as ever, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time. So from London, goodbye for now.